All right, we are live. Good to see everyone here. In this live stream, we are going to be writing a novella together in a chatbot. Obviously, this is not going to be like, we're not going to finish the whole thing. We got about 10 chapters to go through, and we'll probably just get through one or two today because I'm also doing a fair amount of experimenting today. So that will take a little extra time. But in the future, we're going to have a couple of these to show you the entire writing process. I know, like for me, sometimes I think it would be boring just to watch someone write for hours on end, but some people really want to see my process. So in this and the next couple of live streams over the next few weeks, we'll be doing that just using chatbots. And in the future, we'll do it with other software. We'll write a different novella with a different software tool. But for now, we're just using a chatbot just to see how it could be done, because most of you have access to some chatbot or other, or you can use what I'm going to be using today, which is Open Router, which is pay as you go. I would normally be using a chatbot like Perplexity, which is my current favorite for this. But for today, the reason I'm not doing that is because I want to test some, I'm taking this opportunity to test some parameters inside of Open Router. So with that said, we're going to be using Open Router for a lot of what we're doing today. So let's get into it, shall we? Give me 1 second here. Let's see, story brief, or scene brief. All right. I'll share my screen here. Okay, so we're in Open Router here. If you're unfamiliar with Open Router, I have 1 or 2 videos about it. It is essentially a chatbot that has everything you need, and it's I use it mostly because it has an API that I can hook to any automation or a tool like Novel Crafter or Raptorite. But I'm using it today because this is a great place to test results in different models. So my my process today is going to be testing. We're going to be doing each step 4 or 5 times, and I'm going to be comparing and contrasting, and we're just going to be testing a couple of parameters, which you can't do in a normal chatbot. So I am cheating a little bit here by using Open Router as my chatbot because it gives me access to the parameters. But you could essentially do the same process in any chatbot, especially if it has a projects feature like Claude projects or ChatGPT projects or Perplexity's spaces. And so let's just get into it. So the novella we're doing is Bloodline of the Abyss. The last couple of live streams I've done, it's been a little while, but I had started creating this. I got through, we've got an outline, we've got characters and world building. And I recommend people, when you're creating a project like this, have a dedicated folder for it in Google Drive or something similar. And from there, you can create all of these documents and keep them safe and well organized. So I've created a couple of new ones that have nothing in it. So we have this one, which is where our scene briefs are going to go. And we have this one where the full text of the book is going to go. We also have the outline, the characters, and the world building, which are going to be important to us later. So let's close some of these. All right. And then I also have my automation for creating text because I'm going to be using some of these prompts. Again, I'm cheating a little bit, but we are going to be using these prompts to test in Open Router. All right. So the first step we need to do for writing is creating a scene brief. So most of what I'm going to be doing is just 2 steps: creating a scene brief, then creating the actual text, and then editing that text. So I guess that's 3 steps that we'll be doing for each chapter. There's 10 chapters in this outline. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab this prompt. We're going to take it into Open Router. We're going to grab a model, and for the scene briefs, we're going to be using Claude Sonnet 4.5, multiple versions of Claude Sonnet 4.5. So let's go ahead and get this ready, because we're going to be testing not different models, but different versions of the same model. So this first one, well, firstly, we need to make sure it's got our prompt and our information. So this is the space where you add your system prompt. We're going to be putting lots of data into here. So I'm going to paste that prompt here from the automation, and we're going to fill out some of this stuff, namely the outline, the characters, the world building. And since this is chapter 1, we don't need the previous chapter text, but we will be putting that in there. Whoops. All right, let's check this out again. All right, well, what's going on? All right, so we don't need previous chapter text yet. World building, characters, outline. All right, so let's go in here, grab our characters, world building and outline. All right, so here's the outline. I'm just going to copy this text and put it right here. All right, then we're going to copy the character list and put it right here. And I want to copy our world building info and paste it right here. And like I said, we don't have previous chapter text. And these instructions, I think... All right, we're going to modify these instructions just a little bit. Your task is to flesh out a scene brief for the chapter that the user will provide. Make sure the chapter is clearly labeled with the name of the chapter. Do not name the chapter anything besides this. The scene brief should include the following. Okay, and then we have all the things that the scene brief includes. And yep, that's it. So I'm going to apply this to all. So they all have the same description. Let's double check that. There we go. And this one. And this one. All right, now they all have the same system prompt. Now we're going to do the things that change between them. So this first one we're going to leave at its total default settings. And we're just going to leave it. This is our control, essentially. This one, I'm going to call this increased, what are they called? Penalties, frequency, increased penalties. And this one I'm going to call increased temperature. And this one I'm going to call increased penalties and temperature. I suppose I could make another one where I decrease the temperature as well, because that might actually be good. But we'll just go with those 4 for now. Actually, no, let's do one. So let's pull everything from this. Let's do another Claude Sonnet. This is going to be expensive. All right, put that current prompt in there. We're going to call this decreased temperature. And once again, this is for creating a scene brief. All right. Now, so we've named them, but we haven't actually modified anything yet. So let's, for increased penalties, we go down here to sampling parameters. And these 3 are the ones that we're going to increase: frequency penalty, presence penalty, and repetition penalty. Because these tend, like this one says, this setting aims to control the repetition of tokens based on how often they appear in the input. It tries to use less frequently those tokens that appear more in the input, proportional to how frequently they occur. Token penalty scales with the number of occurrences. Negative values will encourage token reuse. So we want to discourage reuse. Now I have no idea what's a healthy place to put this. So we're just going to start at like 0.4 here. And same with these. I'll put this at 0.4. And it looks like this one I'll put at 1.2. And that's what we'll do for this one. All right. So that's for increased penalties. For increased temperature, we're just going to raise We're going to leave the penalties where they are and increase temperature to, let's say, 1.3. For increased penalties and temperature, we're going to do both. So temperature to 1.3 might be a little high. Temperature to increase frequency penalty to 0.4, presence penalty to 0.4, repetition penalty to 1.2. Okay. And then decrease temperature, let's, the only thing we'll change here is decreasing this temperature. We'll bring it down to 0.7. And this is just testing to see which one gives me the best results using the same model. I've already kind of determined that Claude 4.5 is a better model for the step. But yeah. All right, so now we've got all our models. We've got, every model has all of that data. So now we're just going to say chapter 1. Or I guess we can give it a little more instruction. Please give me a scene brief for chapter 1. And now it already has all of the instructions in its system prompt. Oh, let's check. Is it reasoning? All right, we want to enable reasoning. Let's do medium for all. Medium reasoning for everything. Cool. All right, now we'll say, please give me a scene brief for chapter 1 and let them go. All right. While that's going, I can look at the questions here. Hey, Jason, I've got an out of context question. How long do you think a chapter in a novel should be, and how important are fillers in a book? I'm not sure what your definition of fillers is, but I would say filler is something you don't want. Every scene should serve a purpose. Now, there might be some that feel a little like filler, but they still, like, they're foreshadowing something, they're increasing they're advancing the plot, or developing a character, or establishing some kind of setting, world building thing. As far as chapter length, it really, there are no rules on that. I personally go for something around 2,000 words on average, but there's absolutely no rules around that. You'll see it all over the map. Some people have chapters that are like 5,000 words. Some are more like 1,000 words. It just depends. Steven says, I'm glad I was able to catch your stream. I want to say your vids have been helpful to my novel writing process, and I'm glad I discovered you. Wish I could afford your 1,200 subscription. Yeah, sorry about that. It's not something that's meant for everybody. Kind of an exclusive thing. All right, it looks like we've got some results here. Now for the long part, which is kind of determining if there's any major difference. They might not all be done yet. All right, so this is the control. This is the one where everything's at its default. All right, yeah. And this is good. All of this plot stuff, I'm not too worried about. This is all going to be more or less the same because it's just giving like a list of events from what's in the outline. What I'm more interested in is what it's doing here around scene function. Compassionate nature. Introduces the plague. First encounter with the hidden horrors of the East Wing. The glimpse through the cracked door. Physical appearance. Okay. And what I'm looking for here is just like, how well does it describe the scene? Because we have descriptions of Carmilla already, but how is it different for this specific scene? And I'm looking like, are there AI-isms in here that I want to avoid? This might also help me adjust my prompt too. There's one thing I noticed when I was revising a book that was written entirely with these methods, is that the dialogue was actually really good, but every scene of dialogue had a very similar rhythm to it. So for one scene, it was good, but when you noticed it across like every scene, there were some issues there. And I don't know how much of that might be best set up here. All right, so setting. Yeah, this all looks good. Main source of call. Oh, it looks like it didn't finish. Don't like that. Okay. All right, here's the one with the increased penalties. Yeah, it's not bad. We may find that this doesn't make a huge difference, at least not at this step. The next step, well, we're gonna check that. Oh, this one didn't finish either. Huh. Maybe there's just they're having a problem somewhere. I don't get this problem when I'm using the API. It's only like when I'm doing an automation. I've never seen it cut off in the middle like this. But when I use OpenRouter here in its own chat interface, I get that. But anyway, well, we're just trying to see if any of these are any better. Yeah, I kind of like some of this. So this is with the increased temperature. Yeah, I think some of this is good. It's giving me like some more specifics, which I like. And here it is cutting off again. I wonder if there's, could this be something I've got here? Oh, I might, yeah, hang on. We're gonna give it max tokens for all of these. Oh, but that's input tokens. And I feel like, well, just in case, I'm gonna increase the max tokens. See if that makes a difference. When we regenerate. All right. All right, this one is increased penalties and temperature. The truth is, though, that I am not seeing a huge difference between these. All right, and then this one is decreased temperature. Let's check this one out. Oh yeah, I can already tell. Yeah, we don't want decreased temperature. This one I am able to tell that there's like these beats are so much shorter and not really giving us any new details. Just get a little farther. All right, so I think there's an improvement by increasing the temperature a little bit. I'm not seeing much by increasing penalties. I have a feeling the increased penalties will be more useful later when we are generating the prose. So I'm going to turn all of these off except the increased temperature one. And run this again, see if it will actually get through the whole thing. So let's clear the chat. Give me a scene brief for chapter 1. So we'll just let the one model go that had the increased temperature. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Space. Also good to see you, Space. So remember that Claude does not support penalties, only temperature, top P and top K. I did not know that. I mean, I'm able to mess with it here. That might explain why I wasn't seeing much of a difference. Okay, that is good to know. And yes, there's a question about what temperature does. So the official definition here is this setting influences the variety in the model's responses. Lower values lead to more predictable and typical responses, while higher values encourage more diverse and less common responses. At 0, the model always gives the same response for a given input. So basically it increases or decreases the probabilities in its word choice. And people often think of it as making it more or less creative. So yeah, that's essentially what temperature does. So I've turned this up to 1.3. I think it does okay. But for creating a scene brief like this, it's not something that I think requires like where this is going to make a huge difference. But we'll see. All right. What other questions we have while this is going? I'm noticing that it is going longer, so that's good. It looked like it was cutting it off earlier. Okay, so Space says Claude's temperature scale is 0 to 1. It does not go over 1 at all. So then are they showing something different here? Because all right, we're gonna test temperature. We're gonna test it. We're gonna raise it to some huge extremes and see if it makes a difference. But we'll do that in a second. All right, so we've got this one. I'm probably gonna be okay with this. It looks like it got through the whole thing, so that's good. We're gonna copy this. Actually, let's copy the markdown. And paste into our, where are we? Our scene briefs. Come on. Paste from Markdown. No, no. Paste without formatting. What is going on? Why is it asking me to install a Chrome? Like, just paste it. There we go. Weird. All right. Scene brief, chapter 1. The burden of mercy. Okay. Now we're going to set up a whole new thing. All right. Let's set up a new chat room. We're going to call this chapter room Prose Generator. And we're going to do essentially the same. Well, no, we're going to do different tests, but we are going to change the model to Opus 4.1. Web 4.1, please. We'll do this one as our control. For increased penalties, I guess since there are no increased penalties, we'll remove those. But we're going to test it first with extreme temperature and extreme the opposite direction in the extreme. 4.1 and 4.1. We're also going to change out the prompt here for one from my automation. All right. First draft. Well, hang on. Oh, I've got to pull up my style sheets and everything. Great. Okay. It's going to take a minute. All right. Sample prose, style sheet, prohibited words, full context. That's the outline, the characters, and the world building. Last chapter text, which we don't need for this one, and the scene brief. So let's start with the prose style examples. So for this, I'm going to have to go to prose style. I need to make more of these, but this will do. Style sheet. Okay. So grab my prose samples, put that in there. Now we want the style sheet. Put that in there. We need the forbidden words doc. Here it is. All right, full context, that will be the outline followed by the character list. I throw the entire kitchen sink at this prompt, and it's expensive because I'm using Opus, but it's worth it. All right, previous chapter text we don't have yet. Scene brief, and I might actually remove that and make it part of the prompt. And then the scene brief. So the scene brief we just got is this one. I'll just copy the whole thing. Scene brief. All right, now let's tweak this prompt. Your task is to write the entire chapter that the user specifies based on the scene brief, and to cover it thoroughly from deep point of view, writing the scene as if written by a best-selling novelist and not rushing through the scene. Use the prose style examples. Chapter should be long, and I think this is all good. Okay, let's copy this enormous system prompt, put it into these others. So now it should be good. Another thing I might test here is reasoning or not reasoning. That's going to increase the price, but yeah. So let's duplicate this and turn off reasoning. And we'll call this one no reasoning. All right, I'm about to spend like $5 on just this one prompt, okay? Please write the prose for chapter 1. Well, got a context length issue. 200 tokens. I'll just leave it like somewhere here. I get this error sometimes. I'm not entirely certain what's going on with it. And I forgot, yeah, we gotta. Oh, I see. It's because it was above 200,000 tokens. So let's just move it so it's beneath 200,000 tokens. That should be good there. Now let's make sure our other sampling parameters are good. So this one's defaults, yeah. Increased temperature, yeah, we'll leave this at 1.3, I think. Oh, no. We're going to do the extreme just to test and see if it's doing something. So we're going to take the temperature all the way up. Decreased temperature, we're going to take it all the way down. And actually, I'm going to turn off the no reasoning for now and turn off this one because I just want to test these two out and see what they do. Let's clear this chat. Write the prose for chapter 1. Insufficient growth. What? Credits. I have auto top up. Why would it tell me? This is really weird. Open router's being weird. Let's try it one more time and then if that doesn't work, I'll just add some stuff. Write the prose for chapter 1. Okay, that's weird. I'm gonna blur the screen here for just a second. Just in case so I don't show you any sensitive payment information or anything. I don't think that would be the case, but we're just gonna do that. Let's add $20. All right, so it should be good now. Let's go back. All right, prose generator. Let's try this one more time. Please write chapter 1. All right, so we have one that's like increased temperature all the way up, and one that's decreased the temperature all the way down, and it's processing. For the reasoning, they are almost exactly the same. Maybe temperature isn't something that makes a big difference in Open Router. Weird. All right, I'm gonna pause it. Huh. So space says temp only goes to 1. Yeah, but I brought it down to 0 for this one. I would expect something different. Maybe this is just, maybe I need to be testing this in the API, in the official Claude API. Maybe OpenRouter is just not the best place to do it. Oh well, we'll do that next time. In the meantime, let's just, I'm just going to turn these off. And now we're going to test reasoning or no reasoning. And that's the last test we'll do today. And then I will edit this chapter and we'll call it a day. So let's go. Okay, please write chapter 1. Okay, what did I do wrong? That one's max tokens are fine. So are that one's. One of them's going though. All right. So reasoning, it thought for 18 seconds. Didn't look like it thought much. But we'll see if it makes a difference in the prose. All right. These are also very similar to each other. Well, we'll end up using one of these. Let's see if there's any other questions here. All right. Still going. Yeah. This one ended though. All right, this one, the one with the reasoning, I think actually did seem a little better, but that could just be like luck of the draw. And how many words did we write here? Okay, that's about right. All right, so we'll use this. And I'll continue to use reasoning in the future. All right, so that's the scene briefs. So we're looking for the full book. Paste. Chapter 1. And now comes the fun part of going through and revising this. So this is the part that I think would be boring, but people tell me that it isn't. And Opus gives me pretty clean drafts here. So most of what I end up doing when I'm revising is actually going through and cutting stuff. But a lot of it's, there's very little stuff that I have to do to it. The bells cut through Carmilla's prayer. I don't like this metaphor, like iron through silk. Jolting her out of relaxation. 4 strikes, then silence, then 4 more. The pattern for the infirmary. Someone needed her. She rose from the chapel stone floor, knees protesting after the long vigil. Her breath formed clouds in the pre-dawn air as she gathered her wool shawl closer. Yeah, that's okay. The candle flames bent away from the draft that swept through the vaulted space, and shadows danced across the carved saints watching from their alcoves. I would normally... It's since we're starting off the story, I think it's okay to have a little bit more description to kind of establish setting. But one thing I've found that in future chapters, it does this all the time, where it's constantly establishing the setting. And so, like, this is the kind of stuff I would normally cut, but I think we'll leave it here for now. The corridor stretched before her, lit only by the dying torches and their iron brackets. Her footsteps echoed. I don't like echoed. As she walked, she'd hurried along the passage. She noted the ice crystals that had formed on the narrow windows, and the cold pressed through her habit like needles. The infirmary door stood open. Candlelight spilled into the corridor, and with it came a smell that made her stomach clench. Something sweet and wrong, like fruit left too long in the summer heat. Sister Mira bent over 3 figures laid out on the wooden beds. Her shoulders curved with exhaustion, and dark stains marked her gray habit where she'd wiped her hands. They arrived just after Compline. Sister Mira did not look up from her work from the northern roads. Carmilla moved closer. The nearest figure was a woman, perhaps 40 years old, her skin the color of old parchment. Black lines ran beneath the surface, like ink spilled under ice. It's not really a metaphor that most of us would understand. Branching and spreading in patterns that hurt to follow. Oh, man. So this one, anytime. So a lot of my books deal with like cosmic horror stuff. There's just like elements of cosmic horror in them. And I've noticed this patterns that hurt to follow is everywhere when the AI writes that. So I trim most of them out now. 1 or 2 is okay, but sometimes it's better to just say weird patterns. The woman's lip moved in silent prayer, though her eyes stayed closed. The second bed held a young man. His eyes were open but wrong. A film covered them like milk poured over glass. Covered in a white film. He stared at the ceiling, chest rising and falling, and wet, labored breaths that rattled in his throat. The third made Carmilla's hand rise to her mouth. A boy, 12 years at most, with hair the color of wheat before harvest. His small fingers clutched a wooden horse carved with the simple skill of a likely carved by his father. The toy's painted eyes had worn away from handling. The child's lips were cracked and bleeding, moving the familiar rhythm of Paternoster, though the words came out as whispers and gasps. The plague, Sister Mira's voice held no question. Carmilla knelt beside the boy's bed. His fever burned through the thin blanket. When she touched his forehead, checking the heat, something moved beneath his skin. Not muscle or bone, something that shifted and pulsed with its own rhythm, separate from his heartbeat. She jerked her hand back. Yeah, that's good. I like that. I know. Sister Mira brought a clay bowl filled with the water from the chapel's font. Watch. She dipped a clean cloth into the blessed water and pressed it to the woman's blackened veins. The infection pulled back, not much, barely visible, but the dark lines contracted away from the holy water's touch, retreating deeper under the skin before creeping forward again. It reacts. Carmilla took the cloth, studying the woman's arm where the veins had momentarily lightened, as if it knows, as if it thinks. Sister Mira's words hung between them. We'll just... said Sister Mira. They worked in silence, cleaning wounds that wept black fluid instead of proper blood. The boy's wooden horse fell from his grip, and Carmilla caught it before it hit the floor. The wood felt warm, almost alive from the child's constant holding. She placed it back in his palm, and his fingers closed around it with desperate strength. Again. Slowly. The infirmary door slammed against stone. Yeah, well, against the stone. Mother Superior Agatha stood in the entrance, her face carved from shadows and exhaustion. Dark circles ringed her eyes like bruises. Her knuckles showed white where she gripped her rosary. The wooden beads clicked against each other in a rhythm that didn't match any prayer Carmilla knew. Move them. Agatha's voice carried the edge of someone who hadn't slept in days. To the east wing. Carmilla stood, the wet cloth still in her head. Mother Superior, the main infirmary has better. The east wing has special accommodations for their condition. Each word fell like a stone dropped into still water. We'll say, Mother Agatha's voice held no room for question. Oh no, but we use the word question. Room for debate. You will not question God's plan for these souls. Sister Mira's head bowed immediately, hands folding into her sleeves. But Carmilla remained standing, watching how Agatha's eyes wouldn't meet hers, how they fixed instead on the door she'd entered through. The east wing has been used since Sister Carmilla. The title cracked like a whip. Yeah, I think we'll leave that. Obedience is not optional. The silence stretched until the boy on the bed moaned, a sound too deep for his small throat. His prayer had stopped. The wooden horse dropped again, rolling across the floor to stop at Agatha's feet. Little things like this that I really like about Opus. How it says the wooden horse dropped again. Like it clearly remembers that it dropped earlier. And it's like kind of layering in details like that in a way that makes sense. It's hard for me to like really describe exactly what's going on there, but like it does a great job. It does a great job with like scene consistency. The Mother Superior stared at it for a long moment before bending to retrieve it. Her hand shook as she held the toy, and for an instant something flickered across her face. We'll say flickered is overused, so we'll say moved across her face. Not the stern authority of her position, but something raw and afraid. Whoops. She handed the horse to Carmilla. Bring them now. They prepared the refugees for transport. The woman could walk with support, though her steps dragged and caught as if the floor kept changing beneath her feet. We don't need that. The young man needed both sisters to hold him upright, his clouded eyes tracking movement that wasn't there, flinching from shadows only he could see. I'll say his clouded eyes darting this way and that, as if flinching from shadows only he could see. Carmilla carried the boy. His weight felt wrong, too light in some places, too heavy in others, as if her bones were rearranging themselves beneath his skin. That's that whole sentence. The wooden horse pressed between them, its carved edges digging into her chest. Corridors they entered were older than the rest of the convent. The stones fit together without mortar, held by their own weight and centuries of settling. No torches burned here. They moved by the light of 3 candles, flames bending in drafts that came from nowhere. Behind heavy doors, sound leaked through, scratching like fingernails on stone, wet coughs that went on too long, and underneath it all, a low moaning that might have been wind through cracks and might have been voices worn down to nothing but need. Don't listen, Agatha walked ahead, her back rigid. Don't slow. But as they passed one corridor, a door stood cracked open and Carmilla looked. Rows of narrow beds filled a long chamber. Leather straps hung from each at the wrists, the ankles, across the chest. Dark stains spread across the stone floor in patterns that suggested violence or worse. The walls bore scratches, some arranged in groups of 5 like desperate attempts at counting days. Others were wild, chaotic gouge deep as if hands had clawed until fingers broke. There's some good description in here. The smell that escaped through that gap made bile rise in her throat, decaying chemicals and something else, something that had no name because it shouldn't exist. Move. Agatha's hand closed on Camilla's arm, pulling her forward. Do not look, do not think, move. They descended the stone steps worn concave by countless feet. The air grew thicker, colder, carrying a dampness that clung to skin and cloth. The boy in Carmilla's arms began to shake, not like a child with fever, but like something trying to escape its own skin. And the east wing's main door loomed before them. The main oak door with reinforced iron bands stood ahead of them. Agatha produced a key from beneath her habit, the metal corroded green. We'll just say a large and clearly old key from beneath her habit. The lock turned with a sound like breaking bones. Don't need that. Sometimes there's more, like there are moments when you want it to have really good description, and there are moments where it just like continues to have that really good description, but you actually don't want it because it becomes too much. So there's like an ebb and flow of like, there are moments where you really want to like dial into that one moment and give it plenty of description, and then the rest you don't necessarily need that. And AI can't really discern the difference very well, but it is what it is. Beyond the door, darkness waited. Their candles pushed against it, but couldn't pierce more than a few feet. Shapes suggested themselves. More beds, more straps, things hanging from the ceiling that swayed, though no wind reached its deep. Things hanging. Don't need this mysterious non-wind. They entered. The floor felt different here, sticky in places, and Carmilla's sandals made sounds like walking through mud, though the stones appeared dry. See, there's like weird stuff like that. We'll just say sticky in places. They placed the woman on the first empty bed they found. Sister Mira's hand moved in quick practice motions, securing the straps before the woman could resist. Why? Carmilla began, but the woman's eyes snapped open, completely black now, and her mouth stretched wider than any human jaw should allow. The scream that emerged wasn't human anymore. They moved fast with the young man, though he didn't fight. He mumbled something in a language Carmilla didn't recognize, syllables that made her teeth ache. Nope. He mumbled gibberish, though there was structure to it, as if it were a language Carmilla didn't recognize. The boy was last. As Carmilla lowered him onto the narrow bed, his body went rigid. The wooden horse fell from his grip, clattering on stone. His eyes opened. Where there should have been a child's frightened gaze, something else looked out, ancient and hungry and aware. His jaw began to unhinge, bones popping and reshaping. The prayer on his lips transformed into a growl that rose from somewhere deeper in his small chest, deeper than his small chest could hold. His hands shot out, grabbing Carmilla's wrist. The fingers were wrong, too long, joints bending in directions that shouldn't exist. Where his skin touched her, cold burned like fire. He's advancing. Agatha's voice held something like satisfaction mixed with horror. Faster than the others. Carmilla wrenched free, skin tearing, no. Skin pinched where the boy's transformed fingers had gripped. Sister Mira secured the straps, her movement quick and efficient despite the way the boy's body contorted, trying to escape its own shape. His growls rose to shrieks that echoed off stone and came back changed. They backed toward the door. Behind them in the deeper darkness, other voices joined the boy. Some human, some long past human, all crying out in harmonies that in discordant harmonies. Agatha pulled the door shut. The iron lock clicked home. The sound echoed through the ancient stones like a bell tolling backward, swallowing sound instead of creating it. Yeah, some of the description here is just weird. They stood in the corridor, breathing hard, the 3 candles casting shadows that seemed to move independent of their flames. Yeah, we'll keep that one. Through the thick oak door, the screaming continued. Carmilla looked at the blood on her wrist. What? No, we didn't have any blood. Sister Mira reached for the gun. No, still no blood. Carmilla reached for her hand where the boy had gripped her. What have we done? Agatha turned without answering, walking back toward the main convent. Her footsteps echoed in the dark. Behind the door, the boy's voice rose again, and for just a moment, though all the inhuman sounds, Carmilla heard him crying for his mother. The door stood between them, solid and final. The wooden horse lay forgotten on the floor. Great with the wooden horse stuff. Love that. All right. That's chapter 1. I think we're going to end it there. It's been an hour. The future ones won't take this long to get through any of the specific chapters. So let me know what you think of the prose here. Because sometimes it's hard to stay unbiased, especially when you read a lot of this stuff. But I do think that the prose is pretty good, especially once it's been tightened up a little bit and editing a lot of that superfluous description and stuff like that. So like already it reads quite well. I do see one comment that says it reads like AI and they would do a total rewrite. I mean, obviously it is AI, so it's going to read like AI. But I think Opus requires far less trimming than others and far less changing than others. And it has, like, it just has a bunch of advantages. And I'm curious to know what other people think. But, you know, we'll see. We'll see. All right. So that'll be it for today. Once again, let me know what you think of that prose. And we'll get started on chapter 2 next week and hopefully get maybe 3 or 4 chapters done in the next sitting, because we'll be going through these steps rapid fire. So it shouldn't take as long. But yeah, we'll end it there, and I'll see you next week.